Hi, my name is Eugenia Roche. I am coming on 7 years next Monday, March 17th at Google. I am an account manager on our sales side of the business. I work on AdWords. I work in media and entertainment, and I primarily work with publishing clients. So the scope of our publishing clients is everything from books to magazines to, right now, some pure play digital players in the digital space. Prior to coming to Google, I worked at Condé Nast. I was there for about 2.5 years. I also spent some time interning there and also worked at a brokerage firm on Wall Street. The majority of my time, actually, though, when I was thinking about it in my young adult life, was actually and has been working with publishers, even though I work at Google. I have 2 kids, ages 4 and almost 6, 3 stepkids, 12, 17, and 19. In addition to a full-time job, I facilitate a program through our G2G People Dev program called Foundations of Leadership. G2G is an abbreviation for Googler to Googler. It's a program which enables Googlers to teach, share, and learn from one another. We have traditional programs like Foundations of Leadership, which I will talk about in greater detail, Managing Your Energy, Presenting with Charisma. We have programs like Teach Your Own Stuff. So if you are an expert in martial arts, you can create a program and come and teach it to your peers here at Google. We also have engineering taught by engineers, and we have language programs. So there's quite a bit of Google to Googler knowledge that's shared through this G2G program. I took Foundations of Leadership in 2011, and I was inspired to take the program after I'd come back from maternity leave. I had been out on my second maternity leave, I came back, and change is constant at this company. And I came back, I had a new team lead, I was on a new team, and though I was working with publishers, they threw in some cable folks who kept talking to me about GRPs. I had no idea what they were talking about. The nice thing is that some of these cable companies, like Nat Geo, fortunately had magazines, so I still understood how to speak their speak. So the Foundations of Leadership program is a 5-week self-paced course, and it provided a fair amount of opportunity for me to reflect on where I was, where I wanted to be, what was I looking for, and it allowed me to take some control over a lot of the changes that felt like were just pushed on me. So I have since, though, taken on an additional leadership role in facilitating the course, and I've been doing that for the last 2 years. When the opportunity arose, I raised my hand and said, it's something I'd love to learn. I would love to be able to help other Googlers who were once in my position get through that change and that tough time and not feel like they suffered because they didn't have the facilities or the resources to take advantage of turning that around. Facilitation and just being a part of this program has enabled me to develop confidence in the classroom. I have also developed a tremendous amount of confidence in meetings. So in my real job, I was recently at a meeting at Time Inc. I had 10 executives in the room. It was a 3-hour-long meeting. 95% of the content was delivered and presented by myself and put together that way. And I really think FLT, Foundations of Leadership, was a critical foundation, so to speak, of being able to do that. So, as I noted, I'm on M&E, which stands for Media and Entertainment, and we work with publishers. I love books. I love to learn. I was a double major, English and Political Science at Lehigh University. Anyone from Lehigh? Good engineering school. I was not an engineer. So I love to read, I love to learn, I was a double major, I read a lot, and as I've told you about my background, my current story, my reading time these days is finite. I have to be selective. So the books up here are from one of our partners, Random House. So I've read 50 Shades so that I get the pop culture side of me. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm starting to feel a little bit out of the loop. Gone Girl, a bunch of gals on my team. We did this for a team book club. Eric Schmidt, The New Digital Age. Yes, I'm trying to read it. And The Parent Backpack I recently read as my daughter started kindergarten, and I had no idea. I mean, I have 5 kids, but I didn't know what I needed to do, what my role as a parent should and would look like. And then the Berenstain Bears. So as you can imagine, because I have little kids, I spend probably more of my evenings reading to them than to myself. And actually last month was the Race to Read program. Being competitive, I thought, why read 1 book at night? Let's read 4. So we read a lot, and the Berenstain Bears are in the lineup almost all the time. And earlier this week, actually as I was preparing for today, we were reading the Berenstain Bears and the Truth. So I don't know how many of you recently read it. Maybe you need to be reminded about what happens. The picture gives a lot away, but you know, the kids are home, and it was good for my kids. The kids were home, bored, looking for something to do. They play soccer. Oops, they knock over a lamp. Well, just like any kid, you know, they see mama coming home and they think, we have to cover it up. So they cover it up and they tell a lie. And that lie really takes shape in a larger than anticipated way. And mama, being mama, gets upset with the kids. And she tells them, I'm not even upset that you lied. Or that the lamp broke, rather. Because the lamp can be put back together again. We can buy a new lamp. I'm upset because you lied. And my bears, whom I've always trusted, didn't tell me the truth. And the bottom line is that kids will be kids and things happen, but in the end, trust is something that you can't put back together again very easily once it's broken. So I'm currently facilitating, just wrapped up a 5-week class, and the week prior we had talked about teaming and trust, and how trust is the foundation of any successful team and any successful relationship for that matter. So here I am reading about bears to my kids and thinking about trust, and I think Jan and Stan Berenstain, just like we at Google, knew that leadership can be taught. So here Ben Franklin says, being ignorant is not so much a shame as being unwilling to learn. But it really starts with the ability and the willingness here at Google to learn. Adult learning, as you can imagine, is very different than academic learning. The participants at this company are hand raisers. Foundations of Leadership fills up in like less than a day. That is how much people want to learn here. Programs are constantly being developed. And our programs are not mandatory. They're researched, they're crafted, there's a lot of thought put into them. They're designed to educate and inspire. And actually thinking about crisis response, our products are meant to connect users to information, right? And Google it. Did you Google it? It's now like a word, right, in common language. And frankly, a lot of our publishers whom I work with are a critical part of that ecosystem, because without content, without information, you wouldn't have access to any of that. So think about how you obtain knowledge and information. It's through resources and channels that connect you to it. And it's a fundamental part of our democracy. So what I love about Google to Google programs and Foundations of Leadership is that we are further shaping the learning and development of Googlers, because we are connecting our peers to content about leadership. I personally am continuing to aid in their development and working with them on a program that allows them to tap into experience and relationships and bring that to the workplace. So what is leadership? How many people in this room think that you have to be a manager to be in a position of leadership? I know I heard that question before, which was, how do you manage your team, right? So we just assume because someone's here talking about something, we're in a position of management. Or maybe management was just misplaced for leadership. So I love that the class actually does just that. We try to break down the wall between leadership and management. Sure, some leaders are managers, but the first thing to understand is that in an organization, especially a company like Google, we need both managers and leaders, and they're not the same. In times of war, think about crisis. You really need leaders. Times of peace, you need managers. Both have a place. So we go back to the fundamentals at Google here, and we think about Foundations of Leader just in a very basic sense. So what is leadership? Why is it different than management? Can you be a leader and not a manager? And the answer is absolutely. Through a self-guided process of understanding, you can discover that we're not actually even talking about traditional leadership. Has anyone recently read the Times? There was an article about getting hired at Google. I know you're not being recruited. And our VP of HR, Laszlo Bach, actually said, we're not talking about traditional leadership. We're not talking about being the president of the chess club or vice president of sales. We're talking about emergent leadership. Leadership like when faced with a crisis or you're the leader of a team, what do you do? Do you step in and lead and take action? And then at times when it's appropriate to step back, do you do just that? Leadership requires an understanding of your values, your beliefs, having a bias to action, and taking initiative. So the last class, I asked the group in one of our debrief sessions, I said, can someone give me an example of taking initiative recently? And it was like crickets. It often is at the opening of the class. No one wants to share. And so finally one of the gals raised her hand and she said, I gave up on a project. Now, what you're thinking, why is that initiative and why is that taking leadership, right? What the truth was is that it was taking up time, it was taking up resources, it wasn't going in the same direction as other priorities. It just simply was a waste of her personal resources, but letting it go felt really good. And she was willing to share that with the group, and I was actually struck by the fact that, wow, that was a big admission for you, or for anyone in that matter. And the truth is, leadership requires initiative, it requires optimism, and it requires a fair amount of failure. So there are a lot of examples of leaders in our in history who have failed and continued to succeed, but I think the most salient example for this room is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the best at failing. He got fired from his own company. You could not pick up an editorial piece when he passed away that did not highlight his failure as much as his success. But his failure led him to his next journey. And he even credits that time in his life as the most creative period for him because he was forced to let it go. So think different. That's what Apple asks us to do. When I first came to Google, one of the first questions I got was, how well do you deal with change? And I was single, I didn't have kids. I thought, yeah, I can deal with change. Bring it on. I worked at Condé Nast, which was a company that constantly underwent change. I started in January. By March, I had a new publisher. By June, I had a new role. Change was constant. It was often in the form of a memo. But it was somewhat refreshing. It always felt like, okay, so something's going to happen. That means that we're moving in some direction. There's some upside to this. We're trying to think different. And then in the summer of 2006, our publisher at the time, whom I still am friends with, and I think he's a tremendous leader and manager, he bought into our offsite, our sales meeting, one of his managers, someone from the leadership, Mitch Fox. And he came in and delivered this discussion, this talk about our business and the future of our business. Now, it's 2006. We're pitching a program as part of our marketing project. Snap, save, send. You snapped a picture in the magazine, you saved it, and you sent it. That was revolutionary. It was interesting how at that time we thought we knew that mobile was next, but we didn't even really have the foresight to see where it was going today, but Mitch did. And he challenged us to think different, to act as leaders of our business, and to think different. He actually was telling us something that was going to change our lives. And he closed with the 1984 Mac commercial. So just by a show of hands, anyone ever see it? Do you even know what I'm talking about? All right, cool. A few people do. I mean, I was 5 in '84. So I hadn't seen it, but I'm going to share it with you at this time for those who have not seen it.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives we have created for the first time in all history a garden of pure ideology where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Give me a minute. Whoops. Return to full screen. There we go. Alrighty. So I admittedly was like those guys in the front row. Like, oh my God. Like I had never seen a video like that. I had actually never seen someone in the leadership at Google, at Condé Nast, come and talk to us. It was always, like I said, literally delivered. Any change, any inspiration was in a memo, an email. And I was totally taken aback. I actually was inspired. And I remembered thinking that although this company is changing on the inside, it doesn't actually feel like our business is changing as quickly on the outside. It never left me that we should think different and that change in a company is good. Without changing, you actually have to question the status quo. So that was summer of '06. I came and joined Google in March of '07. I was inspired to take change. That leader, Mitch Fox, he left in early '08, and fortunately for the two of us, we left before the economic downturn in 2009. At that time, I was actually their account manager, so it was interesting to be here on the other side of things. And the company was finally forced to change on the outside. It was no longer focused on changing on the inside, but actually changing the direction of their business on the outside. And we're at a time of incredible change. All the publishers whom I'm working with, they are trying to do new things. They're innovating. What they were doing yesterday is old. And that's why the notion of leadership is so important. It's having a solid understanding of these principles that has allowed me personally to embrace changes. Because if you remember, I was going through a tremendous change when I finally decided to take Foundations of Leadership. And it's particularly at times when things feel upside down that these leadership principles make the most sense. So a new baby, a new team, a new project. It's having trust in those around me, my family, the leadership here, and my colleagues that is fundamental. With change comes an opportunity to learn again. And just this quarter, I was tasked with doing just that when I was facilitating Foundations of Leadership again. And the program decided to change the content and asked if I wanted to pilot it. And because I was, I guess, maybe one of the more senior facilitators, I said, sure, let's do it. And I knew that I was taking some risk. I knew that I could fail. I knew that when the Googlers, who were opinionated, gave that feedback, it may reflect really poorly against me, but I knew that if we didn't try to change the program and if we didn't try to determine whether there was a better way, we would never know. So being a part of that change is uncomfortable, it's scary, but it's what we do here at Google. So leadership for me at Google is biased to action. It's being open to change. I agree with Laszlo. It's knowing when to take the lead, when to seek and ask for support. That's important. Asking for help is an important part of leadership. And doing so throughout each step. It's humility, the willingness to learn, and the challenging yourself to think different. So I have two things in closing. One, it's a quick exercise, and we do this in Foundations of Leadership. So I want you to close your eyes, look at the ceiling, look down, left, right, what have you, and just take a minute and think about a leader in your life. How many people thought of a business leader? No hands, nice. A politician? a family member, a teacher or coach, a community leader. Research shows that when we are asked who the most influential leaders are in our life, generally respondents will answer predominantly that family members, teachers, and coaches are the most influential. Leadership is personal. There is no definition of leadership. There is no right answer. There are leaders around us who are doing everyday things, people who are trying to change systems, change ways things are done, create something new. And these leaders are just like you and me. Because the best leaders are the best learners. Yes, leadership can be taught to those who want to learn, and we all have the ability to lead. So I will close with a little video around leadership at Google and what it looks like for others as well.
Leadership to me is doing something that you know is right, even when others aren't as sure.
So leadership to me is three things: communicating effectively, building relationships, and making decisions.
Aligning your passions with the right people and finding a purpose together.
Leadership at Google to me is about having the passion and the courage to make a difference for the things that you believe in.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I wanted to ask, so in technology it's really hard not to only be a woman because of the percentage, but also like one of the ladies were talking how they come from not traditional background. So how do you approach this better when you have a room full of very opinionated developers, and you're trying to not only convince them to do something, but convince them to do something they don't really want? Or
That's a good question.
Or like something different, something new.
So can you give me an example?
Okay, so if the company is very back-end developer driven, like a very traditional approach, I'd say, where developers just have one role, getting them to think different sometimes is a challenge. You know, trying different approach might be a challenge, and being the only, not necessarily leader, but trying to lead this effort can be a challenge. So,
got it. So that's where the bias to action thing, I think, makes the most sense, or at least I had a personal experience where, so I used to work on the traditional side of ads, right, and worked Eugenias. In fact, when I was leaving in HR, they said to me, "What are you going to go do? Sell AdWords?" Like it was the lowest brow thing I could possibly be doing, leaving this glamorous magazine to go here. And so now I'm here a few years down the road, and Eugenias is my client, and I keep going in with different team members who want to sell them a YouTube masthead. And every time I'm going in with my head down because that's not what they want to buy. That's not what they're interested in. They're looking for a solution to a business problem, and we're not helping them. So I actually did something for my team. I created a How Do Magazine Publishers Make Money 101. And I had my teammates after the fact say to me, "Oh my God, I had no idea." They are now one of our biggest clients because we finally understood, and my teammates who actually pitch ideas to them finally understood we have to tap into what their business problems are and solve them. So I can't really speak from an engineering perspective, but I would say if you can find a business problem and attempt to address it in a way that solves it, I think you're in a better place than trying to push against something that's unwilling to change.
Hello, Milena Berry.
Hi.
I'll be your second question, I guess. So I deeply believe in vulnerability as being kind of a core exhibit of leadership. And so I wonder if you share that belief at Google and whether you actively train people on it and you really push forward, do you look for it in interviews? Do you, build that culture around it? Just a question.
Yeah. So actually, going back to the Berenstain Bears and the Truth, because that was the Monday. So my class is on Wednesdays. So I had the Wednesday, and then came Sunday or Monday, we were reading the Truth. And trust was around teamwork. And how do you build trust? And the bottom line is you want to build vulnerability-based trust. If you want to look up Patrick Lencioni, we use a lot of his content. He had come to Google, and so we had a video, we taped it one time, and Googlers watch it. But it's about being, butt naked and being completely honest. We do a lot of things at Google to develop trust. We have opportunities for Googlers to have lunch with one another, team events, offsites. So trust is really important because everything we do is usually on a team. Even if you are the manager of a team, you're probably part of a bigger team. So teams are really, really important here. And the bottom line is you can't have an effective team if no one trusts one another, and you need that vulnerability-based trust.
Hi. I'm curious how you assess the impact of the trainings.
How do I assess that?
Or me.
So feedback is asked for. So I personally get a score on it. I can't remember if I saw this once, but there's something like, teachers take credit for students who do well. And there's some psychology behind it, but I honestly have seen people in my class who have gone on to do really incredible things. Like I know Jackie Brown is here. She's a lead recruiter. She runs yoga. I see her all the time. Her name is always out there doing these classes. And I want to say she's probably been doing it before FLT, but I really started seeing her, and even people I know say, "Oh, you're going to Jackie's class." So I think it's assessed in part by how we see people move on and do other things. Again, they're hand raisers. So people who come into these programs are already in a place where they're looking to be an agent of change, or they're looking to take initiative. They just need someone to push them over the edge, and they just need the core principles to help guide them in that direction. So it's not uncommon to see people suddenly on a promotion path or suddenly be taking on a new project. And the last quarter, the content I've piloted, one of the things we did was we tasked the group with certain priorities that we've identified in the company and asked them to lead and be an agent of change against them. One of the participants in the class is actually moving forward with that on an internal thing that we have around Google Geist. And she said, "I don't know if it's the intersection of the program or my interests, but it made me want to do it." Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Beatrix Carroll. So my question was, I've seen a lot of culturally instilled like problems in women, for instance, I mean, problems that women face in their attitude, for instance, like seeing multiple friends and coworkers work really hard for an extra year and like be in frustration rather than ask for the promotion or raise that a male counterpart would have probably asked for earlier. So I was wondering if you see any pitfalls and setbacks to leadership that women in particular face, and like what advice you give them in your class.
So that's a good question. That's something I struggle with. The last 2 days I was traveling with my stepdaughter to visit colleges, and when reflecting on where she's going to go, one of her decisions may be to a school she wasn't an original choice, because she said, well, I didn't think I was going to get in there. And I said, why? Like, she didn't think she was going to get in anywhere, right? And that's the way women think. And I'm trying to get her to stop doing that. This last class of Foundations of Leadership was pretty well balanced. The last few quarters I noticed it was really heavy in men, and I don't know why. But I will say that Google is very conscientious around trying to flip that around on its head. We have a large percentage of women in the company. We devote a lot of time and attention around building our women, because they shouldn't be just left in the sidelines while their men counterparts take off. We're a growing company, so there are growing pains, but it is certainly something that we're trying to address. And I think in part that's why I like being a part of this program and being part of the G2G, because I can help shape that further, but also standing up there and saying, but I'm a woman and I'm going to take on this challenge, hopefully will motivate others. In terms of, yeah, so that's the bottom line. It's not something that's overlooked. I could put it that way.
So I actually had a very similar question to that. It just has a slightly different bend to it. I was wondering, there do seem to be pretty big differences between the way guys traditionally lead and the way girls traditionally lead. And I was wondering, you were giving examples of all of these different types of leadership. How do you make that apparent to a company? It's not as easy as saying, I was president of the chess club, you know, I'm a good leader. I was wondering, with these new sorts of leaderships where you don't have to necessarily be a manager, how do you still convey that to people, that you have leadership skills? It's just a different type of leadership. It might be a quieter type of leadership.
That's a good question. That's something I think Laszlo should have been asked as a follow-up in the Times. Because frankly, I don't know. I mean, when our leadership is up here saying, well, we're looking for these qualities, I don't actually know if all the way down here on a day-to-day level, on the ground level, how that's assessed. I can say in terms of our performance management, at least on the sales side, they recently changed it so that you're going to be evaluated more around your performance, the things that you're doing, as opposed to your peers. And I've really wanted something like that, because there are things that I'm doing my peers are not doing, but yet my job function is the thing that I keep getting assessed against them around. And we're not the same. So the company is trying to change and trying to identify areas where people are speaking up, where they are taking initiative. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't be here if I didn't keep coming to different things and saying, I do FLT, and I'm passionate about this. I mean, in part, it's because you have to just keep putting yourself out there and raising your hand. And there are women that will overshadow you. Don't forget the men. I mean, there are a lot of women in this company. It really is. I think, I could be wrong, but I think there are more women here than there are men. At least that feels the way things are. So, and we should support one another too. So keep that in mind when you think about women, because I think sometimes women are not always the best supporters of one another. Any other questions? Yeah?
Last one. Sorry. Just curious, because I come from a military background. I work for the government, and it seems I love everything you're talking about and all the initiatives you're taking on and the leadership courses and everything. I'm wondering if in private industry and here in Google, you find the same type of resistance I personally, or you know, we find in a more traditional environment like the military and government.
So can you define resistance, just so I understand?
Well, like when you're creating all these programs like the G2G, or when you're offering the leadership course, was it just as easy as saying, oh, here's this leadership course, and everybody goes, yes, I want it? Or do they like openly encourage this type of?
Openly encourage, absolutely. There is, like I said, there's the teach your own stuff. So if you have a skill or trade or something you want to share with others, literally, there are knitting clubs. There's someone who can teach martial arts. I have a girlfriend who's now facilitating, but she was once in my class. She goes to a writing club. Like, it's taught by someone else who has a writing background. So if you can get people to, again, I was out visiting colleges, like if you have an idea and you can get people to be invested in it or join you or do it, you can find support in a way to promote it. So G2G is the avenue to do just that. And really no idea is a bad idea. It's just making sure that you get your idea out there in front of others.
Thank you.